It starts with a young boy named Christian, out in the wild hunting deer alongside his father, gripping a hunting rifle far bigger than he is. Even at that age, his aim is uncanny. He can drop a deer from a distance that most grown men would never even attempt. And it isn't luck. It's the product of relentless training and a father who raised him with one simple rule burned into his mind. You stand up for the weak, and you never back down from anyone who tries to hurt them. Chris grows up on that lesson. Together with his younger brother Jeff, he becomes a rodeo cowboy and works the family ranch, living the kind of rugged American life he was built for. One night, fresh off a rodeo win, he plans to show off his prized championship belt to his girlfriend Sarah, hoping to sweep her off her feet a little more. But fate has other plans. He walks in to find Sarah in the arms of another cowboy. He doesn't waste words. He grabs the man, ties him up, and throws them both out without a second thought.
Fucking punch everyone!
Put that fucking hat on.
Even after being cheated on and going through the breakup, Chris doesn't let it drag him down. He keeps things easy, drinking and laughing with his brother, taking life as it comes. But then the news breaks. American embassies overseas have been attacked, and the images of the devastation and the loss of innocent lives light something in him. A fire he can't ignore. In that moment, he decides he's done watching from the sidelines. He wants to serve, and not just anywhere. He sets his sights on the Navy SEALs, the elite of the elite, trained to operate across sea, air, and land. The training pushes him to his limits. During one shooting drill, he actually misses his target, and for a second it looks like maybe the legend isn't so unbreakable after all. But then a tiny snake slithers into view, a target far smaller and far harder to hit, and Chris nails it perfectly. That's when it becomes clear. He performs best when the pressure is on and the adrenaline is pumping, when the target is moving and the stakes are real. That instinct earns him his place as a sniper. One night at a bar, out with his teammates, Chris meets a woman named Taya. At first she's cold, sharp-tongued, and completely uninterested, but Chris approaches her with a kind of quiet confidence. Never pushy, never trying too hard, and slowly her walls come down. One conversation turns into another, and before long the two of them can't stop talking. Their connection deepens fast, and soon they decide to get married. But the world doesn't wait for happy endings. The September 11th attacks change everything. Chris and his fellow SEALs are called up, deployed to Iraq to hunt down terrorists. He and Taya barely get 3 days of a honeymoon before duty pulls him away. When he lands in Iraq, Chris and his unit are sent to Fallujah, tasked with providing overwatch and protecting the Marines who are sweeping the streets house by house. It's during this mission that he spots something wrong. A woman and her young son moving toward the American convoy in a way that just doesn't sit right. Then he notices it. The woman's arm isn't swinging naturally. She's holding something. His gut proves right. She's carrying a Russian-made grenade, and she hands it to her child. Suddenly, the boy breaks into a run, straight toward the troops, and Chris takes the shot. Both of them. Staring at their lifeless bodies, the weight of it crashes down on him. He just killed a mother and her child, and the guilt is crushing. But his teammate steadies him, reminding him that he did exactly what he had to do. If he had hesitated, if he hadn't taken that shot, dozens of soldiers would be dead right now. On the missions that follow, Chris proves just how gifted he really is. He takes out the driver of a car bomb while the vehicle is still speeding forward, saving the entire sweeping team. He spots a man planting explosives in the road. He catches an enemy fighter moving into position before anyone else even sees the threat. Kill after kill, his count climbs higher than any other sniper in the field. But the enemy has their own marksman, a sniper of extraordinary skill, someone rumored to have once competed at the Olympics. His name is Mustafa, and he becomes the shadow lurking on the other side of every rooftop. Even in the middle of a war zone, Chris still finds moments to call home to Taya, who is now pregnant. She tells him that his brother Jeff has been deployed to the front lines too. Meanwhile, the mission grows more complicated. The main target now is a man named Zarqawi, along with his top lieutenants. Zarqawi leads the Iraqi branch of al-Qaeda, commanding thousands of highly trained fighters, funded and backed by the highest levels of the terrorist network. The problem is, no one knows where he's hiding, so the troops have to comb through the city relentlessly, clearing 10 buildings every hour, searching for any trace of him. Chris wants to go down and join the sweep himself instead of just watching from above. But his team makes the case that he's far more valuable where he is. With Chris guarding them from the rooftops, every soldier on the ground feels safer. His confirmed kills climb even higher, and now the men have a name for him, the Legend. But this latest operation brings heavy losses, and watching so many soldiers get hurt eats at him. So he makes the call to come down and move in with the assault team. Chris enters a house that turns out to belong to a man named Salim and his family. With the help of an Arabic-speaking soldier, they begin questioning him. And it becomes clear that Salim is terrified. Terrified of a man named Amir, the second most feared fighter under Zarqawi. Because anyone caught talking to the Americans is tortured, and Amir's weapon of choice is a power drill. Eventually, Salim agrees to reveal Amir's location, but only if he's paid a fortune for information this dangerous. $100,000 for a secret that could get his whole family killed. After confirming the target's identity, Chris and his team gather the money and head straight for Salim's home to make the trade. On the way, Taya calls with wonderful news. The baby she's carrying is a boy. But even in that joyful moment, danger is closing in. Mustafa is already lying in wait, lining up a shot on their convoy from somewhere far in the distance, and then the shooting begins. It turns out Amir already knows exactly why the Americans have come. The troops scramble to secure the money and pull out of the area. And because his betrayal has been exposed, Amir turns his cruelty on Salim's family, killing the man's son with the same drill, then gunning down Salim as he tries to save his boy. To escape Mustafa and reach the rooftop, Chris throws down a smoke grenade. But there's no real way for him to fight back. He doesn't know Mustafa's exact position, and all he's carrying is a standard rifle. No match for an enemy sniper. He barely survives, a bullet grazing his helmet close enough to feel the wind of it. The mission is a failure. Salim's family is dead, Amir has slipped away, and the troops walk away with nothing. For now, the operation is put on hold, and Chris and his men are finally allowed to go home. Taya is overjoyed to see her husband return safe and whole. Like any couple who has weathered too much distance and too much longing, they finally get to spend time together again. Not long after, Taya goes into labor, and by pure luck, Chris makes it home just in time for the birth of their child. But even with a newborn in his arms, his mind is still back on the battlefield. The war rages on, the casualties keep piling up, and here he is, alive and safe in the comfort of his own home. That contradiction tears at him. It sparks tension between him and Taya, and she pleads with him to promise he'll come back alive for the sake of their family. Soon after, Chris ships out for his second tour. But before he leaves, he crosses paths with his brother Jeff, who is also heading into a mission. And Jeff looks broken, worn down by this war, wanting nothing more than to just go home. By now, Chris isn't only famous among the Americans. He's known among the enemy too. Al-Qaeda has put a bounty on his head, offering a small fortune to anyone who can bring them his skull. On the other side of that coin, Chris has been given his own dedicated team with one purpose, to finally capture Amir. The sweep begins again. That night, they search a home belonging to a man named Malik and his family. They question everyone and show them a photograph of Amir, but no one recognizes the face. With the situation seeming calm, the soldiers decide to stay put, and eventually their patience pays off. They locate Amir hiding inside a large building. Because the day happens to fall on a major holiday, Malik invites all the soldiers to share a meal together. The atmosphere is warm, welcoming, almost like family. But Chris notices something off. Malik's elbow is heavily calloused, the kind of mark that comes from firing a weapon over and over. Something isn't right. He searches the house again, and sure enough, hidden beneath a mattress and covered by a rug is a secret compartment, and inside it, an entire stockpile of weapons. Malik is captured on the spot. Rather than be killed, he chooses to help them get inside Amir's stronghold. The soldiers move into position, each one taking their post for the raid. And then the gunfire erupts. It turns out Amir, the man they call the Butcher, keeps far worse than weapons inside his lair. Human remains, evidence of the horrors he's inflicted. But Amir and his men manage to escape through a hidden tunnel and circle back to ambush the troops from behind. The firefight is brutal and unavoidable. But Chris, sharp-eyed as ever, spots Amir trying to flee and cuts him down before he can vanish. After that victory, the story moves quickly. Chris returns home once more, this time for the birth of his second child. But everything he witnessed overseas still haunts him. He's become dangerously paranoid, jumping at the ordinary sound of a repair shop. The soldiers he saved keep flooding back into his memory. One of them lost a leg, and the guilt never leaves. The breaking point comes when he watches his newborn crying in the hospital, and he suddenly snaps, furious that a nurse isn't attending to the baby quickly enough. Taya watches all of this with growing fear, worried about the man the war has turned him into. Anxiety and trauma among returning soldiers is nothing new, especially after coming home from combat. And yet, in his mind, the war still comes first. Back in Iraq, Chris and his team are given a new assignment: to finally kill his rival, Mustafa. They begin moving through the streets, and enemy informants quickly spread word that Chris and his men have arrived. Mustafa immediately hunts for the perfect vantage point to take his shot. Chris chases down a terrorist fleeing from a vehicle and kills him. Believing the area is finally clear, he and his teammate Biggles casually walk across a rooftop, and in an instant, a shot rings out, aimed straight at them. Biggles goes down, critically wounded, the bullet tearing deep into his cheek.
What do you mean you can trace the diamond as ales?
I don't think I was going to.
Chris calculates that Mustafa fired from more than a mile away, an almost impossible distance. After that, he and the others go back out hunting for Mustafa, determined to avenge Biggles. But when they reach the spot where they believe Mustafa was hiding, the terrorists are already waiting in another building, and they manage to kill one of Chris's teammates, Mark. Mark is laid to rest with full honors. As the leader of the group, his commanding officer pays a final tribute, placing the Navy SEAL badge upon his coffin. Afterward, Chris visits Biggles, still lying in the hospital bed. He tries to lift his spirits and swears he'll avenge him. Meanwhile, Taya delivers her final ultimatum. If Chris walks out that door and goes back to the war again, she and the children will be gone when he returns. All she wants is for him to stop fighting and finally choose his family. Chris pulls her into his arms, trying to calm the storm in both their hearts. On his fourth tour, Chris is shattered by the news that Biggles has died on the operating table. And in that grief, Taya's words come rushing back to him, that he has to make it home alive, that his family needs him. Scanning the area, Chris spots another terrorist preparing to fire a rocket launcher, and he takes him out. Then a young boy wanders over and picks up the abandoned weapon out of curiosity. For a heart-stopping moment, Chris has him in his sights. Thankfully, the boy sets it down, and Chris lowers his rifle. The mission is still the same: find and kill Mustafa. The soldiers head to the location provided by intelligence, but several of Chris's teammates are hit by fire coming from a rooftop. Chris keeps searching for Mustafa based on the intel, only to realize they've been given the wrong position. Mustafa is in the opposite direction. Chris shifts his stance and hunts for him, using nothing but the sound of his shots to guide him. Finally, he catches the faintest hint of movement, nearly 2 miles out. A rapid response team is called in to move on Mustafa quietly, because the shot is considered flat out impossible. No one believes anyone could make it from that distance. But the team is still 20 minutes away, and Chris has a feeling in his gut that won't let go. He knows somehow that Mustafa is already lining up a shot on one of his own men. So he steadies himself, and he takes it first. The shot defies all logic. One pull of the trigger, and Mustafa falls dead. But the victory comes at a price. That single shot reveals Chris's position to the entire Al-Qaeda force. And within moments, the troops are surrounded on every side, hopelessly outnumbered. And then the battle explodes. Drones circle overhead, watching helplessly. And at the worst possible moment, a sandstorm begins rolling in. Chris and his handful of men are trapped inside the building. Cornered, running low on ammunition, the commander is forced to call in an airstrike, one that could wipe out the terrorists, but might just as easily kill his own men. In the chaos, Chris calls Taya and tells her he may not make it out, but luck stays with them. The approaching sandstorm throws the missile off its mark, and the thick wall of sand begins swallowing the building, blinding both sides. And so the final firefight unfolds in the heart of the storm. After that mission, Chris walks away from the Navy SEALs and becomes a full civilian. But his anxiety only grows worse, and part of him still aches to be back helping the soldiers in Iraq. He withdraws into himself, prone to bursts of unexplained anger, still hearing the echoes of explosions and gunfire ringing in his head. Finally, Chris goes to see a psychologist, and the doctor helps him understand the truth. What haunts him isn't the ones he killed, it's the ones he couldn't save. So instead of returning to the battlefield, Chris is encouraged to keep helping soldiers a different way, by supporting fellow veterans struggling with their own wounds. both the ones you can see and the ones you can't. And it works. Little by little, that mission of healing others begins to heal him too. He starts living normally again. He becomes the father who is finally present for his children and the husband his wife always needed. But in a cruel twist of fate, on February the 2nd, 2013, Chris is killed. Not on some distant battlefield, but at the hands of a fellow veteran named Eddie Ray Ruth, a man broken by his own mental scars from war. Eddie shoots him while Chris is trying to help him, taking him out to a shooting range for the very kind of therapy that had once saved his own life. This film is based on the autobiography written by Chris Kyle himself, and nearly every character and event in it is drawn from real life. Chris is believed to have taken more than 160 lives in combat, earning him a name whispered in fear by the enemy, the Devil.